Okay, everybody, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us tonight to part 20 of Halichot Bat Yisrael. Tonight, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll be going through the laws of the 3 weeks, the 9 days. If we get up to it, Tisha B'Av as well. Bli Neder. And hopefully, we can say that hopefully this is all going to be in theory, because Be'ezrat Hashem, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring us Mashiach Tzidkenu B'mehera B'yameinu. And we simply will not have to observe any of these rules, Be'ezrat Hashem, because it will be a time of rejoicing and celebration for all of Klal Yisrael. B'mehera b'yameinu, amen. And therefore, this is all going to be just in theory. But if God forbid Hashem does not send us Mashiach Tzidkenu, then it's important for us to know what we are allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do during this time period. And the general idea is that the Gemara tells us in Masechet Bava Batra on Daf Samech Amud Bet. The Gemara tells us that there was a certain point in history when it was right after the destruction of the temple, and the Jewish people were absolutely devastated. They were so sad. They didn't want to eat any meat. They didn't want to drink any wine. They didn't want to have anything. They didn't want to rejoice. They didn't want to know from any kind of happiness. And Rabbi Yoshua said to these Prushim, the Gemara calls them, they said, how could we have meat when meat was something that used to be brought up on the Mizbeach? How could we have wine when they used to offer up wine on the Mizbeach as a libation? So they didn't want to have any meat, they didn't want to have any wine. And there were a lot of different things that they were refraining from doing. And Rabbi Yoshua explained to them, he said, listen, if that's the route that you want to take, then you're not going to be able to have anything, because there was also water that was offered up on the Mizbeach on Sukkot. There was also bread that was part of Bet Mikdash. So you're not going to have water, you're not going to have bread, and there are many other such examples. So Rabbi Yoshua explained to them, he said that no, the way that it works is that there is what the rabbis decided to do in order to demonstrate mourning, and beyond that, we're not expected to do. So the rabbis in that sugya over there were talking about what it is that when a person builds a house, he's supposed to leave a certain amount of space undone as a commemoration for the destruction of the temple. So too, we are now learning these halachot, we have to remember that we're not going to observe these halachot all year long, even though it's something that we might feel the need to do. But we're not going to observe these halachot all year long, even though it's something which is very, very good, very positive to be sad about Bet Mikdash all year long. But rather, we limit it to the exact rules that the rabbis laid forth for us. And those rules take effect in these 3 weeks. So the rabbis said, listen, we cannot require you to do something which is too much of a burden. We cannot require you to be sad all year long. We cannot require you not to eat meat all year long. We cannot require you to not have wine all year long. We cannot require you to do things that are just too much of a burden. You can never decree on the people unless they can withstand it. So that's not an option to do that all year long. However, the rabbi said, but these 3 weeks, when it's the time of the destruction, then it is appropriate to observe these things, and these 3 weeks out of the year, it is appropriate to observe the different rules that demonstrate sorrow and mourning over the destruction of the temple. So it's not all year long, but it is expected that these 3 weeks, when it really is the time that it took place, when the devastation really happened for Klal Yisrael, that we will observe the mourning. And it says that anybody who observes the mourning over the temple, he will merit to see the rebuilding of the temple. So that's really our ultimate goal here, that we are hoping that by us showing and demonstrating that we are sad over what happened, that we feel the pain, we feel the loss of the Bet Mikdash, so that way Hashem will see that we really understand how bad it is, and will therefore merit to see that it shall be rebuilt. Amen. So that's the idea. So let's talk about the general rules of the 3 weeks. So first of all, famously, I'm sure you all know that we, on the 3 weeks, we don't listen to music. The reason being that music is something that gladdens the heart, makes a person happy. And therefore, as a commemoration for the destruction of the temple, we don't listen to music. There's a discussion about a cappella music, which is an interesting discussion. You see, regular singing, if I just want to sing for myself, is perfectly fine. I can sing and you can sing and everything is okay. You can sing for yourself, everything's fine. That's okay. If you have a song that's literally just people singing, so then there's nothing really wrong with that. It's just singing. However, the a cappella music that comes out nowadays is so well done in the studios that it really just sounds like a regular song with instruments and with all these types of things that a studio can produce. And therefore, you're really kind of defeating the purpose if you listen to an a cappella song that's just like a regular song. If it's just people singing with their voices, just singing, just like if I sing or if you sing, so then that's one kind of an a cappella. That's regular, it's a guy singing, it's okay. Or a few people that are just singing a melody, that's okay. That's not considered to be something which is a problem during this time period. But what they come out with nowadays is that the music is so well done with layers and with, in the studio, they make it into like a real song. So that already, I think that kind of defeats the purpose, in my humble opinion. And therefore, I try to stay away from it during this time period. Okay, now, if a person actually makes a living off of music, let's say the person is a musician, she plays piano, she plays the harp, she plays something, she does some kind of, maybe she teaches piano. So if a person is bound to lose their livelihood because of this, then it is permissible for them to go ahead and to do it. They don't have to lose their livelihood over this. Okay, that I don't think that comes up too often, but it's good to know in case it does. Now, also during the 3 weeks, we don't say Shechianu. The reason being that when we say the blessing of Shechianu, that's a very happy occasion. We're thanking Hashem that He has given us life to reach this very special moment, this very special day. And the unfortunate reality of these days is that these days are very sad, and we're not really supposed to be so happy. So therefore, to say thank you Hashem that we have reached this moment, that's kind of the wrong thing to be saying right now, because it's not a happy time, it's a sad time. And therefore, we don't make this blessing during these weeks. Harav Ovadia alav hashalom and others held that you are allowed to say this blessing of Shechianu on Shabbat. So at any Shabbat in between the 3 weeks, one is allowed to say Shechianu, just not during the weekdays. But on Shabbat, you're allowed to say Shechianu. So let's say a person wants to say Shechianu on a new fruit. If a person wants to say Shechianu on a new suit, so then a person can go ahead and say it on Shabbat, but not during a weekday. Good. So that's with respect to Shechianu. So can a person, for example, purchase a new car during the 3 weeks? So this is an interesting question, because usually when you purchase a new car, so then you have to say Shechianu. So therefore, the seeming halacha would be that to purchase a new car during the 3 weeks should not be done, because you would have to say Shechianu. So Moshe Feinstein distinguishes between 3 types of car purchasing. He says there's one type of a car purchase where you're buying it for your own personal use. You're buying it for your personal use. That you shouldn't do that during the 3 weeks, because that is something you would have to say Shechianu over. On the other hand, let's say that it's for your business, right? Or let's say, and this is an important rule to remember all throughout the 3 weeks. This is very important to remember, so I'd pay attention to this one. If the price will go up, in other words, if let's say right now you're getting a discounted price for whatever item we're talking about, so then you do not have to suffer a loss. You are allowed to go ahead and you are allowed to buy it now, even though there is a Shechianu that is involved, because of the fact that you don't have to suffer a loss for that. So that's important as well. Another point is that if the car is needed for your business in a similar way, right? If it's needed for a business and it doesn't require shechianu, because cars for business don't require shechianu, so then you would be allowed to do it. And also, Rav Moshe says a very interesting chidush, and that is that if the car is not just for you personally, but rather it's for the whole family, so then he says that that's okay as well, because the blessing for something that is not only for yourself, but for yourself plus others is not shechianu, but rather hatov ve'meitiv. And that is a general blessing that is not only for a personal simcha, but it's for a personal simcha that is shared with other people. And that blessing, hatov ve'meitiv, is actually something which you are allowed to say. So therefore, being that it is considered to be for the whole family, it's hatov ve'meitiv, and therefore it's okay. I think I saw a question over here. Let me take a look. Okay, can I purchase a car for personal use if I won't receive it until after the 3 weeks? What if I might sell out and I will lose the opportunity to buy the car? So yeah, if you have an opportunity to buy something now, and you think that you're going to lose that opportunity, if you think that it's not going to be available for you, then you would be allowed to buy it, because that's like suffering a loss. Okay, good. So that's an important question. Let's say a person wants to buy an apartment, a person wants to buy a house. Let's say a person wants to go into contract, or he wants to move into a new place during the 3 weeks. Is it okay? So the Or L'Tzion, Chacham ben Sena Shaul in Chelek Gimel, Perek Chavav, Halacha Aleph, holds it is okay. And therefore a person would be allowed to go ahead and to do that. And it's considered to be acceptable because of the fact that he is doing it before Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av. Just during the 3 weeks is considered to be okay. All right, so that's important to know. You have a source for that if you need. So that's important as well. All right. Now, what else is a problem during the 3 weeks? So it's important to know that there are some differences between the minhagim of the Ashkenazim and the Sfaradim during the 3 weeks. So, for example, the Sfaradim hold that you're allowed to take a haircut, you're allowed to shave all throughout the 3 weeks. There is no problem until Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, until the week of Tisha B'Av. So it happens to be that this year, the week of Tisha B'Av doesn't really exist, because Tisha B'Av falls out on a Sunday. And therefore, we do not say that the whole previous week is considered to be the week of Tisha B'Av. And therefore, there really is no week of Tisha B'Av this year. Last year there was, but this year there will not be. And so therefore, really, we could get up a haircut all the way up until Shabbat before Tisha B'Av, meaning Friday until Friday before Shabbat. Now, although that is true, it's important to be aware that the poskim do say that it is appropriate not to get a haircut on Friday before Shabbat, before Tisha B'Av. The reason being that although technically it is okay to do so, but there's a concept of coming into Tisha B'Av with a little bit of an undone type of a feel, a little bit of a mess, a little bit, they call it menuval, but it doesn't really mean menuval. Menuval means like a, the kind of a terrible person. Over here, it means somebody that he's a little bit not, he's not 100% in his best look. So therefore, it is praiseworthy. Again, halachically, is he allowed to? Yes, he is. But still the poskim recommend, and they bless somebody who refrains from doing that because of the fact that he is still coming into the Tisha B'Av with a little bit of a, kind of unkept look. And that's considered to be praiseworthy. It's a sign of mourning for the Churban Habayit. Okay, so that's one very important difference because the Ashkenazim, they don't take a haircut or shave throughout the entire 3 weeks. So there is a very big difference in terms of custom, in terms of that. Another difference in custom is that Sfaradim get married during this period. because even though we say that we're supposed to be mourning for the Churban Abayit, but if there's a mitzvah like getting married, which is a very big and important mitzvah, so that mitzvah pushes off the mourning, and therefore a Sephardic couple that wants to get married during this time period would be allowed to. And usually by the Ashkenazim, that's not done. It's not done during the 3 weeks because of the mourning. So again, that's just another difference in custom. Now, what about swimming? Is a person allowed to go swimming during this time period? The answer is that we hold that technically, yes, you are allowed to go swimming during the 3 weeks. The question is until what point? So over here, again, we have a little bit of a difference in custom. By the Sfaradim, you can go all the way up until Shavua Shechal Bo Tisha B'Av, which means until the week that Tisha B'Av falls on, which again, this year doesn't really exist. By the Ashkenazim, usually the custom is that from Rosh Chodesh Av, from the beginning of Av, they don't go swimming. Now, the reason for that is because during the month of Av, it says the mazal of the Jewish people isn't great. As a matter of fact, it actually says that from the time of Shiva Asar B'Tamuz, there's a little bit more of a danger that exists in the world due to different Lo Aleinu Shin Dalids that exist in the world. And therefore, it's important to take precaution. It's very important to be aware of your surroundings during this time period, but particularly from Rosh Chodesh Av and on. And therefore, the custom by the Ashkenazim is that from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av, including, of course, they would not go swimming. Personally, I kind of adopted that Bli Neder, that custom, because of the fact that it is really a time period that is a little bit more of a scary time, and therefore we don't want to put ourselves in any kind of a situation that could be scary. For example, flying during this time is something, meaning from Rosh Chodesh Av and on, is something that if you could avoid it, it's preferable to avoid flying during this time. If a person is flying to Eretz Yisrael, on the other hand, it's brought down that it's perfectly fine because the mitzvah of going to Eretz Yisrael will protect him. But just in general, the idea of flying is something that if you can avoid it during these days, it's better to avoid it during these days. In general, from Rosh Chodesh Av, it's brought down that it's appropriate to try and push off any kind of issue that a person might have. Let's say he has a court case. Try and dodge the court case, delay the court case until after Tisha B'Av, until the 11th, 12th, 13th. That's already a much better time for Am Yisrael, because the court cases that take place then, we have the lower hand, so to say, in Shamayim, and therefore it's better to avoid them. There are other rules that take place from the beginning of Rosh Chodesh Av. We'll get to them later. But going back to the 3 weeks. So we said that we don't listen to any music during the 3 weeks. That's an important rule to remember. But it's important to know that if, let's say, somebody has a simcha shel mitzvah, Baruch Hashem, the guy had a baby boy, and now he's making a brit milah, or let's say that he's doing a pidyon haben, or let's say that it's a bar mitzvah, and that bar mitzvah is actually the day of the bar mitzvah, meaning today he just turned 13, and he's putting on tefillin for the first time. So the poskim do say that, I actually saw from the Or HaHalakha quoting Rav Ovadia alav shalom. He writes that it is perfectly permissible at one of these events to have music there and to go ahead and to play music in honor of the mitzvah. So very important to know that there is such a heter. So if, let's say, the person wants to bring instruments and to have a simcha over there, technically it is permissible. So that is from the Chazon Ovadia in the Sefer on Dalet Ta'aniyot. It's page Kuf Nun Gimel, and it's in the second column over there. So Ovadia does write that, and he says that it could be for any simcha, like a brit milah, pidyon haben, a sheva brachot also. If the person is doing a sheva brachot for a chatan and a kala, then it's okay. Not for a bat mitzvah. It says bat mitzvah doesn't have that same status, although it is, Rav Ovadia does write many times that it is perfect, that it's a very important thing to have a simcha for a girl that became a bat mitzvah. At the same time, however, they're strict when it comes to a bat mitzvah not to have instruments. Okay, so if a person, now, by the way, I want to just make something clear. If you have a custom to be strict about this, if you know that, listen, I don't know what this rabbi is saying. For the longest time, we have, we've had plenty of events that happened on the 3 weeks, and we've never brought in ever any music or anything like that. Then follow your custom. Don't ever deviate from a minhag that you have, especially if it's a more strict minhag. But on the other hand, if a person is asking and wants to go ahead and to do this, and he does not have such a minhag, so then you do have a heter from Chacham Ovadia, alav shalom, that gives you this heter, and I believe others do as well. So it's important to know. Okay. Also, there are other times when music is necessary, and the question comes up: can they use it? For example, at camp, many times when it comes to camps, the counselors and the staff, they play music for the kids to hype them up, to get them excited, to get them moving from one place to another. Sometimes it's necessary. So can the campers go ahead? Can the staff play music for the camp during the 3 weeks? The poskim say that it's okay. Also, there are other situations which come up. I kid you not, the poskim talk about this. Can you listen to the music while you're on hold? When you're on hold calling up some company or something like that, do you have to close your ears? The poskim say no, you don't have to close your ears. Same thing when you have music at the store, playing in the background, you don't have to close your ears. The reason being that you're not trying to listen to the music, you're just walking around, and you're not listening in order to enjoy. If you start to, get into it, then already that might be something else. That's not okay. But if a person is just, listening because he's on hold, and there's nothing really too important over there, he's just waiting to go to speak to whoever it is, then there's no problem. Okay, fine. Also, when a person has, let's say, workout music, is it okay the person is exercising, they put workout music in the background to get the guy motivated to move, to do his exercises? Is that okay? Poskim again deal with that, and they say that it is okay until Rosh Chodesh Av. But once Rosh Chodesh Av comes, they say that it's better to refrain from that, because already it's more of a severe, it's more of a time period where you want to lay off of that. So if you can, which we should, the poskim say, we should not have the workout music in the background from Rosh Chodesh Av and onward. Okay. Now, another very important case where music comes up. This is really important. It's really, I'm sure that people could figure this out on their own, but it's just good to speak it out anyway. If, God forbid, somebody is driving and somebody is tired and they think that they might doze off, God forbid, in the middle of driving, then you put that music on nice and loud so that you can wake yourself up and maybe hear the music, get a little bit into it, whatever the situation may be, but that way you're awake while you're driving, and God forbid nothing would happen to you. But if a person holds off on that and therefore puts himself in danger, that's a big problem. So therefore, in such a case, if you're afraid, God forbid, you might fall asleep while you're driving, without a shadow of a doubt, you put on music. Okay. Another question that comes up: if, God forbid, somebody's in the hospital and they want to play some music for him to cheer him up, somebody might come over with a guitar and cheer the guy up to lift up his spirits. They allow that as well. That's a very wonderful thing to do. Also, what if a person has an instrument that he wants to practice? He wants to practice playing his instrument during the 3 weeks. So Rav Moshe finds in Alav Shalom paskins that it's okay to practice your instrument during the 3 weeks. However, he says it would be better to do it someplace that's private, because, again, you don't want to appear in the eyes of people as somebody who is rejoicing and enjoying during this time of mourning for Klal Yisrael. So he advises that somebody should, if he wants to practice, he should do it someplace that is private. Okay, next, let's continue. So that's all during the 3 weeks themselves. Now, from Rosh Chodesh Av, we said already things start to get a little bit more strict. Mishenichnas Av mema'atim b'simcha. When Av comes in, we minimize the simcha. We minimize happiness. Now, what does that mean practically? What that means is that if somebody has any kind of involvement in something that has to do with happiness, happy occasions, we try and limit that. If you have to purchase, let's say, a dress for a wedding during this time, now is not the time to do that. You want to take care of that before the 9 days. You want to take care of that after the 9 days. You don't want to take care of that during the 9 days because of the fact that this is a time where we're mema'atim b'simcha, which means that we would not want to do some kind of purchasing that would make the person happy. The dress for the wedding, we wouldn't buy. But not only that, in general, we're not going to purchase new furniture during this time. We're not going to even order furniture, even if it is going to come in at a later date after the 9 days. We're not going to paint the walls or make nice designs on the walls, because these are things that make a person happy, that make him glad, that make him, feel good. If a person, the Gemara talks about making a wedding hall for his son, right? He's not supposed to build any kind of a structure that is going to make him happy or be involved in building at all during this time. That's for the purpose of making him and his family happy. He should hold off on that. Now is not the time to do that, because it's a time where we're mourning the temple. Now remember, we said already previously, if the person is going to suffer a loss because of this, like for example, if the prices are going to go up, so then the person would be allowed to go ahead and to order that furniture. However, again, we would lechatchila not want to do it, but if the guy is going to suffer a loss because of it, then the rabbis did not require him to suffer a loss for that. Now, let's say a person needs to buy clothing. Again, we said clothing and these types of things we don't want to purchase during the 9 days. It's asur to do that because of the fact that it's a time of mourning. If a person, however, does not even have one pair of shoes to wear, and he really needs, or his shoes are torn, in other words, he really just literally needs a pair of shoes, then already the poskim say that he's allowed to purchase the pair of shoes. And so too when it comes to things that are not really such big items, like for example, socks, or maybe if a lady needs a pair of stockings or whatever the circumstance may be. It's very basic items that there isn't much rejoicing over, right? So that the person would be allowed to go ahead and to buy during the 9 days. Also, we would not sew or weave any new clothing during this time because of the fact that this is a time of mourning and this is something which would make a person happy. Okay. And of course, during this time period, we do not eat any meat. There's some kind of a mistake out there. I don't know if Sfaradim themselves actually have this mistake, or it's just Ashkenazim who think that we do this. And it's for some reason people think that the custom by Sfaradim not to eat meat only begins the week of Tisha B'Av. That's a mistake. All the poskim that I saw all agree that the custom by the Sfaradim is to be strict about it as well, and not to have meat from the beginning of Av. However, the only difference is that the Sfaradim have a custom that we could eat meat on Rosh Chodesh Av. So on Rosh Chodesh itself, you're still allowed to have meat. However, once Rosh Chodesh is over, from that point and on, not allowed to have meat until Tisha B'Av is over. Now, there's differences in custom amongst the Sfaradim. What is the time period that you're allowed to eat meat? Some Persians have a custom that right after Tisha B'Av is over, they eat meat. However, the truth of the matter is that in the Shulchan Aruch, you'll see that that we're not really supposed to eat meat until the following day. Meaning I believe the custom by the Ashkenazim is until midday of the 10th, and from what I remember, the Shulchan Aruch is saying that even until the 10th at night we shouldn't really have meat. So there are differences in custom as to when you are allowed to have meat. So therefore, everybody has to check up their custom on that. What is exactly that they do? So that's important to watch out for. So we had a question over here. Let's take a look at the question and then we'll continue. Is a person allowed to buy clothing during the 3 weeks and wear it. Okay, so regarding buying clothing, so that's what I was trying to say before. Regarding buying clothing, anything that requires a shehechianu, you're not allowed to buy during the 3 weeks because that would require you to say a shehechianu. So what would be something that would require shehechianu? So for men, let's say a suit is something that would require shehechianu when he wears it. That's the custom, by the way. We say the shehechianu when we wear it. Even though the Gemara tells us that we say shehechianu when we buy it, commonly the custom is to say it when we put it on for the first time. So if a person wants to purchase it and wear it during the week, so that would be a problem because that would require shehechianu. Can you do it for Shabbat? So seemingly based on the heter that we said before, that if you wanted to wear it during Shabbat, so therefore there would be room to go ahead and do it. I personally think that if the purchase makes you happy, which is what the Gemara itself actually says. The Gemara says that when a person buys new clothing or any kind of new vessel, like we said before, a car, if the purchase itself makes you happy, the Gemara says you're supposed to make the shehechianu when you purchase it. Now, like I said before, the custom is to put it on and then say shehechianu. But I have a feeling that if the purchase makes you happy, in other words, if you leave the store and you're thrilled, I bought this beautiful, brand new dress, and I'm going to wear it in honor of Shabbat. And right now, I'm very happy because of that. I would say that it's probably not the right thing to make that purchase on during the 3 weeks. The reason being that the purchase itself made you very happy, and that's not the right time for that. So therefore, I would tell you that I think that it should be pushed off to a later date. But if, let's say, the purchase itself doesn't make you happy, you just, okay, the first time that you wear it, that's when you're thrilled about it. So then perhaps there's room to be lenient. But in my humble opinion, I think that if you can push it off and you can avoid it during the 3 weeks, I would think that's very praiseworthy thing to do. Okay, fine. Okay, so we said we don't sew, we don't weave new clothing during this time. We said we don't eat meat, right? So what I was trying to tell you before is that we don't eat meat from the day after Rosh Chodesh all the way until the end, like we said before that. And also part of the minhag that we have is that we don't have any wine throughout this entire time period. We don't have any kind of wine whatsoever, not even grape juice. And again, the reason being because it makes a person happy, it gladdens the heart. And this is, again, I'm referring to from right after, from Rosh Chodesh until the end of this time period, which is after Tisha B'Av, either if your custom is after the night, or if it's the following day after Chatzot, or the following day at the end of the day. Different minhagim. Okay, now, can you have other types of drinks? Beer, whiskey, arak. So the Or L'Tzion holds that a person technically is allowed to have beer, whiskey, and arak, and all these other types of drinks. The Chachamim prohibited wine specifically. Included in wine is grape juice, but the other drinks are technically okay. Now, by the way, included in wine is also cognac, because that's made from wine. So that's also forbidden. But the other drinks are okay. Now, the Or L'Tzion does say, again, the same kind of an idea, that if a person wants to be strict, the person who's strict, even not to drink wine, cognac, and all these things, I didn't mean that. Even not to drink beer and whiskey and arak, he deserves to be blessed because, again, he's holding back from things that make him happy. Yes, we have a question here. I see somebody raise their hand.
Yeah, hi. I wanted to ask, do you recommend if someone to fly during the 3 weeks, or you think it's best after?
So during the 3 weeks is okay. The question is more like during the 9 days, meaning from Rosh Chodesh Av until after the whole time period is over. That's when I would say it's better not to fly. But now it's still okay to fly. Until Rosh Chodesh, that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Now, we said that we don't have any meat from right after Rosh Chodesh until the end of this whole time period, whenever your minhag is. And it's important to know, however, that the poskim do permit a person to have meat if there's a simcha shel mitzvah. So if, let's say, there's a pidyon ben, there's a brit milah, there's a sheva brachot, from, let's say they got married before the 9 days and it spills into the 9 days, so then a person could go ahead and have they could have meat at this time period. Now, but there is some kind of limitation to that. It has to be that it's people that would have normally been invited to this event. In other words, if, let's say, you have a random guy that has never in his life, or a random person that he happens to love a good steak or a good kebab, right? And he hears that there's a beautiful pidyon ben going on right now. And he wants to participate in the pidyon ben so that he can eat meat. So the poskim said that's not right. That's not okay. If the guy was going to be invited anyway, he's the friend of the father, she's a friend of the mother, right? Or or it's a relative, somebody that would have been invited. So then yes, they can participate and they can have meat and they can celebrate with the parents or with Chatan the Kala, whatever the situation may be. But if it's a random person that's just showing up because he wants to, be there in order to then be able to eat meat, that's wrong. That's not the right thing to do. So, and by the way, even a siyum masechet, even if somebody, which is a tremendous accomplishment, if somebody has accomplished the completion of an entire tractate of Talmud, and that's a wonderful thing. The Chazal say that when somebody completes a masechet, Abaye says he used to make for the rabbis Yoma Tava leRabbanan, a great feast for the rabbis, a great day for the rabbis. In other words, it's a great accomplishment, so it deserves a wonderful celebration. So that's beautiful. If you want to have meat at a siyum, that's fantastic. But again, it has to be that the people that he's inviting are the people that are there in order to make the minyan, in order to be able to say the kaddish, in order to he would have invited these people anyway. And one more criteria, one more condition is he can't specifically plan his siyum to fall out on the 9 days in order to eat meat. In other words, a person cannot specifically say, oh, I'm going to make my siyum instead of a week earlier, I'm going to do it during the 9 days. That way we can have meat. No. If you happen to have finished the masechet on that day, which is one of the 9 days, then you can have meat at the siyum. But if you're planning it, that it should be on the 9 days in order to have meat, that's not okay. Like, for example, if, let's say, the daf yomi, which is 1 page a day, happens to conclude a masechet on the 9 days, so then there's no question you can have meat then, because nobody planned for it to be then. That's just how it happened to be, that you finished the masechet every day, 1 page, it landed out on that day. So it's important that if your husband or if your son is making a siyum, that don't let them plan for it to be then in order to have meat. If it happens to be then you can make a siyum for them and they can have meat and all of that. Some people have a minhag to specifically plan a siyum on that time and not eat meat. That's fine. That's okay. You can plan a siyum to be at a certain time to bring more joy into this time period. That's okay. But they're not eating meat, which is fine. Sorry, so somebody raised their hand. Yes, we have a question.
Yeah, if we're doing all these stuff to not be extra joyous, like to not shop, to not be extra happy, does that mean that a person shouldn't be extremely happy during these 3 weeks or 9 days?
A person always has to be in a state of happiness, but at the same time, they have to demonstrate sadness due to the loss of Bet HaMikdash. So you have to be happy with everything Hashem has given you. You have to be happy that you're so blessed with so many wonderful blessings. But at the same time, you also have to sit and think about the fact that we don't have the Bet Mikdash. And even just a little bit a day, even just a little amount of time, a couple of minutes a day during this time period, just to sit and think about what we lost. I mean, sometimes it's just important to remember that. That's really just to feel the loss. We used to see revealed miracles every day in Bet Mikdash. Every single day, there were open, revealed miracles. Like, for example, it says that there was a pillar of smoke. There was a pillar of smoke that went up to Shammai from the altar. The altar that we had, which is where all the meat and the sacrifices were taking place, had fires on them, 3 separate fires. And when it would be pouring rain, it was under the open sky, pouring rain, and I mean, tremendous downpour of rain, and the fire would never get extinguished. And it's an open miracle. Tremendous. Can you imagine that there's tons of meat? There are animals being slaughtered all over the place, and blood, and it never had a foul stench, ever. It's amazing. There are many, many miracles that took place. Can you imagine Yom Kippur? Everybody is there. It says Omdim Tzfufim. They're standing together. They hear the name of Hashem. They're tightly packed together. There's no room to move. And then when the Kohen Gadol comes out and announces the name of Hashem, everybody bows down and there's plenty of room. They would see open miracles there on a daily basis. There was one candle, the Ner Ma'aravi, which was the middle, according to one opinion, the middle central candle of the menorah, of the 7 branches of the menorah. That one candle was lit and lasted for hundreds of years, never extinguished. I mean, there were open miracles in Bet Mikdash on a daily basis, every single day. We saw Hashem. We saw Hashem revealed. It was a miraculous type of a place. And we would offer Hashem sacrifices on our behalf. If we ever did something wrong, we could get atonement for that. Whatever we did wrong, it would bring a sacrifice there. We would ask Hashem for mechila. It would be like a real, clear relationship between us and Hashem. It was revealed. It wasn't hidden like it is today. It was revealed. Hashem was revealed in the world. And ever since then, since the destruction, Hashem is in hiding, so to say. Hashem is in a situation of the Anochi Haster Astir Panai Bayom Hahu. Hashem is hiding himself. And he gives you reminders every now and then that he's still running the show, but he's doing it in a format of hiding. And therefore, we are very sad about that, because all the different problems that we had throughout all the close to 2,000 years of exile, all of the problems that we have is because of the fact that we're in galut, that we have all these, that we have this exile that never seems to end. You have terrible tragedy after tragedy. You have the Crusades, you have the Inquisition, you have the Holocaust, you have every single thing that could possibly go wrong to Am Yisrael went wrong. So, we have all these terrible tragedies happening, and we say to ourselves, well, what's, ad matai, until when? So that's the feeling we have to have. We have to realize that had we had Bet Mikdash right now, our situation would have been completely different. Totally, totally different. Had we had Mashiach and Bet Mikdash right now, there would never be different customs. He has this custom, they have that custom. There would be a Sanhedrin with one body that is giving over the Jewish law to the entire Jewish nation. There's no this rabbi says this and that rabbi says that. There's one clear group of rabbis that they decide the law for the whole Am Yisrael, and there are no 2 opinions. There's no 2 ways about it. There's one body of Jewish law. It's a different world, a different way of living, close to Hashem, clarity that Hashem is either upset with us or happy with us, but it's a different level of closeness, and we are lacking that tremendously. So a person has to sit down and think about it a little bit more every day of this time period. Matter of fact, the Chacham Ovadia writes that a person can even say Tikkun Chatzot, which is normally done after midnight at night. You could say that even in the middle of the day during this time period, because any 1 minute that you give, any kind of thought to this concept, you're already in the right direction of what the rabbis wanted from you, which is to just think about what we're missing during this time and feel sorry, feel bad about that, and feel the pain of the Shekhinah, of the divine presence that doesn't have a home for all this time. So therefore, we have to think about all this stuff. Okay, good. Okay, now that's important. There's a question if a person is allowed to buy new Sfarim, new Sifrei Kodesh during this time period, after the 9 days begin. Rav Ovadia held it's perfectly fine because it's for tzorech mitzvah, and therefore you have a heter to do that. Okay, so now, like we said, even though this year we don't have Shavua Shechal B'Tisha B'Av, but there still is a concept not to get a haircut after Rosh Chodesh Av, in order that a person should come into the Tisha B'Av a little bit unkept. We mentioned that already, just to review that. Now, ladies can definitely get a haircut during the 9 days, just like men. And like we said before, she wants to be machmira on herself, tavo alea bracha, but again, the halacha is it's fine. Now, this year we have a little bit of an interesting situation. Like we said, that Shabbat is the eve of Tisha B'Av. Generally, on Tisha B'Av, the eve of Tisha B'Av, there's rules about Suda Mafseket, about what you can eat and what you cannot eat. You can't have more than one cooked dish, and usually it's an egg with ashes and all that stuff. On the other hand, this year, the Suda Mafseket, quote unquote, is actually Suda Shlishit. It's the third meal that we have every Shabbat. And the Shulchan Aruch says clearly that a person at Suda Shlishit before Tisha B'Av, Ma'aleh al Shulchano ki Shlomo b'sha'ato. He can have on his table enough food like King Solomon in his day, which was a feast like none before, and he can have a beautiful feast for Suda Shlishit. What's generally done is mincha would be done earlier during the day, which would give you enough time to do Suda Shlishit and to finish Suda Shlishit before sunset, because you must stop eating by sunset, and therefore you have to go ahead and to start a little bit earlier so that you can be done by sunset. I'm sorry, we have a question. 1 second. Do you have to fast if you are pregnant in 3rd trimester and fasting is hard for you or makes you nervous? That's a great question. Okay, let's get to that in a minute. Great question. So let's hold off on that. We'll get to that soon. So you have to go ahead and make Suda Shlishit, finish by sunset, and then once Tzeta Kochavim, the 3 medium-sized stars, hit, so then a person is supposed to change or whenever Shabbat ends for you. If you hold Rabbeinu Tam, you hold Rabbeinu Tam, which is 72 minutes after sunset. If a person at that point, you have to slip out of your leather shoes and you have to go ahead and put on your Tisha B'Av shoes. Which one of the rules of Tisha B'Av is Nihilat Sandal. You cannot wear leather shoes on Tisha B'Av, so you have to remove them and then put on your Tisha B'Av shoes. Okay. Now, is a person allowed to take a pill on Shabbat that will help them to have an easier fast on Tisha B'Av? Or is that considered preparation? So the answer is, the poskim talk about it. They say that you could take that pill on Shabbat, and it's not considered to be preparation so long as you don't say, I'm taking this to have an easier fast on Tisha B'Av. Once you express that, then already it's a violation of hachana. That's a problem. But also, you have to make sure that you are, I meant to say that it's not considered to be a problem of refuah on Shabbat either. It's not considered to be a problem of healing, meaning the rabbis made a rule on Shabbat, you're not allowed to take any kind of medication if it's not something that is absolutely necessary Like if a person could just pick himself up and move on. For example, if it's a small headache, a little cough, a little cold, so then the person is not supposed to take medication for that. Would this fall in the category of that? So the poskim say no, because you're not trying to heal yourself. You're just trying to slow down the digestion process, which would keep you a little bit more satisfied during Tisha B'Av. It's not a question of medicine. And of course, remember that all medicines are okay if they're for any kind of serious issue, blood pressure, diabetes, any kind of heart condition, any kind of antibiotics. All these medications are fine. Talking about light medications for a slight headache, slight cough, etc., stuff like that. So is this considered to be a problem of that? No, it's not. Okay. Next. What about after Shabbat? Can you wash the dishes after Shabbat and it's already Tisha B'Av? So the poskim say that if you're going to be using your bare hands, you should not do that until midday Sunday afternoon. However, if you are covering up your hands with gloves, let's say, or if let's say you're simply putting them in a dishwasher and you're not washing them, your hands are not going to get wet at all. So then it would be okay Saturday night to already just take care of that. Okay. A couple more points, then we'll get to the question that we had before. What do you do for Havdalah? So Saturday night, what happens is that the men are going to hear at shul, before the reading of Eicha, they're going to hear the blessing of Borei Merea Ish. The blessing of Borei Merea Ish is the blessing over the fire, which specifically must be done on Saturday night, because the reason we do this blessing every Saturday night is because that's when Adam was taught how to create fire. So in commemoration of that, we say Borei Merea Ish every Saturday night. Now, men are going to hear that blessing at shul. Women who are at home who will not hear that blessing at shul should say it. They take a candle, take the regular Havdalah candle, and say Borei Merea Ish. There's no Havdalah over a cup of wine. There's no Besamim. Besamim are there to make a person happier. We don't want to do that right now on Tisha B'Av. So what happens is that Sunday night, after Tisha B'Av, before eating anything, the person will make Havdalah over a cup of wine, and that's it. That's all he has to do. We have a question over here. Sorry. Let me see this question. Is this based on the Sefer Halichot Bat Yisrael? So this is all. Some of it is based on other books. Tonight, it's more based on the different Sephardic poskim, Chacham Ovadia or Letzion. But sometimes I use that book. Okay, great. It's just the title of the series, Halichot Bat Yisrael. It's just we kind of took that title and used it over here. Okay, now, what if you have a child that is of trainable age? So do they have to, if they want to eat something, they know about the mitzvah of Havdalah, and we know that you're not going to make the kids fast the entire. Well, I mean, usually children don't have to fast at all. Chacham Ovadia writes over here that a child does not need to fast on Tisha B'Av. We train them once they are closer to the age of 11 for a girl and 12 for a boy. We train them for Yom Kippur, which is the Oraita. But being that these fasts are fasts that have to do with Churban Habayit, Zecher LaChurban, to commemorate the destruction, we hope that God willing, hopefully this year already, but God willing, if it's not this year, then the next year, we will not have to commemorate these fasts because Mashiach will be here. So therefore, we don't have to train them in that either. So therefore, Chacham Ovadia writes that we don't have to train them in these fasts. So now the question is, if that's the case, but we do have to train them in Havdalah. So the child who's going to be eating really should not eat anything until they make Havdalah, which is a very important chidush. So if they, Baruch Hashem, know how to say Havdalah, give it to them, give them a cup of wine, and they say Havdalah for themselves before they eat, because that's the rule. The rule is that you're not allowed to eat until you say Havdalah. So that's important. Now, with regards to the question that we had before, if somebody's pregnant, do they have to fast? So the strict letter of the law says that whereas on the previous fasts, Asara B'Tevet, Shiva Asar B'Tamuz, Som Gedalia, Tanit Esther, all these other fasts, there is a leniency with respect to nursing women, pregnant women, that they don't have to fast. On Tisha B'Av, the strict letter of the law has it that they do have to fast. Now, that being said, although that is true, many rabbis nowadays do permit pregnant women on Tisha B'Av to go ahead and to break their fast if they have difficulties. Like, for example, let's say a woman has morning sickness, she vomits a lot if she doesn't eat anything, or something that's just very, very hard for her, very challenging for her. So therefore, they permit a woman to break her fast if it's hard for her. So in any case of a question like that, you have to talk to your rabbi directly about your situation, and that rabbi will determine whether you need to be strict or not. In this case, everybody has a different scenario to ask, to deal with. So therefore, it's a case-by-case basis. So the strict letter of the law is that they have to fast. But sometimes there are needs, sometimes there are leniencies, and therefore you have to ask your rabbi, and you'll hear from him what to do. Okay. Now, so I think we had a question over here. So if it's a young girl, she should say the bracha on grape juice for Havdalah. Yes. So if there's a young girl, she's before bat mitzvah, or if it's a boy, and he's before bat mitzvah, but he knows how to make Havdalah. He's already, let's say, 10 years old. Doesn't have to fast, but he knows how to say Havdalah. So he should be saying Havdalah. He should take the grape juice, and he should say Havdalah. He could say Borei Moresh also, and therefore, I'm wondering if he should say Borei Minei B'Salim as well. Probably not. I didn't think about it, but probably not, because of the fact that it's still Tisha B'Av at that point. But nevertheless, he should say the Borei Torah Gefen and Hamadim Kodesh Lechol, and also Borei Morea Esh, like he would normally do during Havdalah. And then he could go ahead and eat. It's an interesting point that these poskim bring down, but it's a true point that if they're not fasting, but they still need to train in the mitzvah of Havdalah, so they should have to say that. It looks like we're running out of time for tonight, so we'll call it an evening. Okay, unless we have any other questions. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
We will we'll call it a night. Thank you.
Thank you.